New year, new you, and of course, new administration. Welcome back to Sustainable Sense. You know, here at Sustainable Sense, we love our politics, especially trade and policy. With the new administration, Trump's new tariffs have landed, and the world is watching. These aren't just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. They're shaking industries, shifting alliances, and testing the balance of global power. In this episode, we'll uncover what tariffs mean, who's really paying the price, and why it's more than just politics as usual. We're at an intriguing intersection of green technology, economic policy, and national security. These new tariffs aren't just about economic competition. They're being framed as essential to U.S. national security, renewable energy, and are also crucial to the U.S. green transition.
Welcome to Sustainable Sense, where we invest in climate defense. You're in for our hot take on all things money, markets, and the environment.
According to Trump, tariffs will create more factory jobs, shrink the federal deficit, lower food prices, and allow the government to subsidize childcare. He even says tariffs can promote world peace. Quote unquote, tariffs are the greatest thing ever invented, Trump said this September in Flint, Michigan. To grasp the current trade landscape, you need to step back and look at the bigger picture of U.S. trade policy. The Trump administration's tariffs, often tagged as national security tariffs, are rooted in Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This provision allows the president to slap tariffs on goods that pose a threat to U.S. national security, essentially protecting domestic industries crucial for defense and economic stability. Steel and aluminum are prime examples. The idea is that during tense geopolitical times, the U.S. needs a robust domestic supply of these critical materials. But, under Trump's policies, this approach has broadened to include sectors vital to the economy and infrastructure, such as green tech supply chain. The aim is to boost domestic production and reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, particularly China. The tariffs target things like solar panels, steel, aluminum, and pretty much everything from China. In fact, Trump calls himself Tariff Man. In recent years, China has become a powerhouse in green technology manufacturing, producing a significant portion of the world's solar panels, electric vehicle batteries, and critical minerals for clean energy. From Trump's viewpoint, this dependence on Chinese imports could be a security risk. Thus, the tariffs are part of a broader strategy to decouple U.S. and Chinese supply chains. He's proposed a 60% tariff on goods from China, and a tariff of up to 20% on everything else the U.S. imports. This narrative is about the delicate chess game of global trade, where tariffs are not just economic tools, but strategic moves in a complex game of national security and economic independence. Now, what exactly does this mean? Is it going to reduce food prices, maybe promote spending, and take us out of inflation? Though many people believe this notion, it most likely won't. Look at it from a simple economic perspective. Tariffs promote domestic production and consumption of goods. The elimination of foreign competitors makes U.S. markets stronger, and this often allows businesses to increase the prices of their goods, since they don't need to stay competitive with foreign businesses. Another corollary effect would be a trade war. If we implement tariffs on Chinese goods, the Chinese are probably not going to be happy that they're losing U.S. customers, since their products have now become more expensive and less appealing to the U.S. market. Then, it's likely that China and other countries would implement tariffs on our goods, potentially disrupting the balance of trade and increasing the trade deficit. A report from the Peterson Institute for International Economics concluded that Trump's main tariff proposals, assuming the targeted countries retaliate with their own tariffs, would slash more than a percentage point off the U.S. economy by 2026 and make inflation 2 percentage points higher next year than it otherwise would have been. Let's dive into the impact of these tariffs on the green economy and see how they might shape the future of clean energy in the U.S. On the surface, these tariffs seem like a strategy to boost domestic green technology manufacturing. By making foreign goods more expensive, the idea is to nudge companies and consumers toward U.S.-made products. However, this approach has a double edge. While it may encourage local production, it also hikes costs for American consumers and businesses looking to embrace clean energy solutions. Let's take solar panels. China dominates the market with affordable and efficient panels, which US companies often rely on. But with the new tariffs, these panels have become a more expensive option. This price surge could deter people from installing solar panels, slowing down the adoption of clean energy in the US. Similarly, electric vehicle batteries, another sector heavily reliant on imports, are now pricier due to the tariffs. These higher costs could stall the transition to clean energy, potentially jeopardizing US climate goals. Let's pause here to reflect for a minute. The Biden administration took a different approach by implementing the Inflation Reduction Act, which was more about providing subsidies for green tech and incentivizing clean energy production within the US. But under Trump, tariffs are the primary tool, making imported green tech less competitive in order to build up US industries. But the question remains, will this strategy succeed, or will it inadvertently slow down our green transition? The stakes are high, and the outcome is far from certain. As the US navigates this complex landscape, it's clear that the path to a cleaner, greener future is fraught with challenges, and tariffs are just one of the many pieces in the puzzle. The tariffs aren't just a domestic issue. They have far-reaching consequences, especially for China, the world's top exporter of green technologies. China is likely to view these tariffs as a direct challenge, adding fuel to the already simmering US-China tensions over technology and intellectual property. This move could prompt China to accelerate its own clean energy initiatives, aiming to dominate markets, where US companies are hindered by increased costs. On a global scale, these tariffs might significantly reshape the green technology supply chain. Other countries, particularly US allies, might see an opportunity to step in as alternative sources for green tech exports to US. This could lead to more diverse supply chains, but at a higher cost. Essentially, the world might witness a shift where countries like South Korea, Morocco, or even Mexico become key players in supplying green technologies to the US, filling the gap left by Chinese exports. Alright, let's take a quick break from the episode with today's trivia question. What percentage of global rare earth metals, essential for producing many green technologies, does China currently supply? Again, the question is, what percentage of global rare earth metals, which are essential for producing many green technologies, does China currently supply? I'll give you the answer at the end, so stick around. The Trump administration has a bold ambition: to create a self-sufficient US-based green technology supply chain. That was kind of a mouthful. However, this is no easy feat. The US is currently lacking in several key areas, including the necessary infrastructure, a skilled workforce, and sometimes even the raw materials needed to produce these technologies on the same scale as China. With oil, petroleum, and natural gas being depleted from states like Texas and even Pennsylvania, the US may face some difficulties with domestic production. The push to reshore industries that US has outsourced decades ago is ridden with obstacles. For one, there are environmental regulations that need to be navigated, and then there are the hefty initial costs of setting up these industries domestically. Transitioning the US economy to rely on its own green technology could be a long and arduous process, spanning years or maybe even decades. Here's another angle to consider. While tariffs might shield emerging green tech companies in the US from foreign competition, they also come with a risk. Without the pressure of low-cost imports, US firms might lose the incentive to innovate and cut costs. This could ultimately slow down technological advancements, creating a less competitive environment in the long run. In essence, the path to a self-sufficient green tech supply chain in the US is complex and filled with challenges. It's a journey that requires careful planning, significant investment, and a delicate balance between protectionism and innovation. So, with these tariffs in place, we're at a unique crossroads. On one side, these tariffs aim to strengthen the US economy and national security by reducing dependency on foreign imports. But the trade-off is that in the short term, and possibly even the long term, these policies could hinder access to affordable green technologies, slowing down our sustainability efforts. And in the financial markets, the impacts will likely continue to ripple as investors, especially ones who invest in companies that rely on imported Chinese capital goods, weigh the long-term benefits and risks. From an environmental standpoint, these tariffs may even lead to an increase in emissions if the US doesn't adapt production processes quickly. As we know, some of the industries targeted by tariffs, like steel, are among the most energy intensive. Without sustainable production practices, we risk offsetting the environmental benefits that green tech adoption is supposed to bring. Now, of course, we can't do an episode without talking about the financial markets. This is where things get interesting. On the flip side, companies that rely on imported materials for green technology may see increased production costs, which could lead to lower profit margins and higher prices for consumers. This could trigger a potential slowdown in short-run aggregate supply for certain green tech companies and their stocks. We may see some dips in the S&P 500, possibly. And let's not forget about the bond market. Higher tariffs can lead to inflationary pressures as the cost of goods rises with reduced import competition. This could influence the Federal Reserve's policies, possibly leading to higher interest rates, which generally affect the broader financial market by increasing borrowing costs. So, while tariffs might boost some domestic green tech stocks, there are long-term financial risks to consider. The intersection of national security, economic policy, and sustainability is more complex than ever under these new tariffs. From a national security standpoint, reducing reliance on foreign green technology is a strategic move. But from a sustainable perspective, it's a double-edged sword. In the short term, higher costs could slow the adoption of critical green technologies, making it harder for the US to reach its climate goals. In the long term, though, if the US succeeds in building a robust green tech industry, it could secure a leading position in the global green economy. But that is a big if, and will require significant substantial investments, strategic planning, and a balance act between economic security and environmental stewardship. For policymakers, the challenge is to ensure that these tariffs don't derail climate goals. A possible solution could be pairing tariffs with incentives for sustainable domestic production. For example, tax credits or grants for companies that prioritize clean production could help offset some environmental and production concerns. Alrighty, time for today's answer to the trivia question. Earlier I asked, what percentage of global rare earth metals does China currently supply? And these global rare earth metals are essential for producing many green technologies. If you guessed around 60 to 70%, you're spot on. China dominates this space, and it's one of the reasons the US is looking to establish a more self-reliant supply chain. Anyway, thanks for tagging along on this deep dive into the world of tariffs, national security, and sustainability. It's a topic that's always evolving, and it's clear that trade policy and environmental goals are more connected than ever. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow our show and like it up. Remember, every small step we take towards sustainability makes a difference. So be sure to subscribe for more insights into the sustainable side of economic development. You can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at sustainablecentspodcast. If you have any questions or episode suggestions, you can email us at sustainablecentspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's sustainablecentspodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, this is your host, signing off. And as always, invest your sense in climate defense.